For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dhlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss Luthuli and understanding ethical choices. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
In your association with Crema Media, you have often written or been interviewed on Chief Albert Luthuli. Why do you see him as so important?
Well, one of the reasons why I write a lot on Chief Luthuli and then get interviewed is because I think he's been neglected. Even though he was a great man, a leader of the ANC, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, he's neglected compared with other figures. For example, you have Nelson Mandela Foundation, Oliver and Adelaide Foundation, Tambo Foundation, Kathrada Foundation, Harold Walpy Foundation, and the foundation of Luthuli is really barely functional. It doesn't draw funds. People are not funding things on Luthuli. There's a very good museum in Groutville, which is important for people to visit, but there is not sufficient attention to him. A few years ago, they had an exhibition here. I think it was in the 50th anniversary of his being awarded the Nobel Prize. But I think they had the idea that if you had it on Luthuli alone, it wouldn't be adequate. So they mixed Luthuli with Mandela, and it was not very good. Now, I personally see Luthuli as a very important leader in the history of South Africa, in that he combines a number of different identities. In this country, we have problems with how people relate to one another, how people who come from one ethnic group relate to another, racism, and a number of other problems. Luthuli was a Christian, but he was also very comfortable with people who believed in local African spiritual systems, and they were the majority of his council in the community, in the chiefdom, and he used to advise his children that they must respect them and learn from them. And they had special praise songs for Luthuli, the Amabeshu, the non-believers in Christianity. Also, I feel that we face ethical problems in South Africa, and what is interesting about Luthuli, if you read his work like Let My People Go, his autobiography, he's introspective. He evaluates, he lets the reader know what went through his mind. So we understand then that in doing what he considered the right thing to do, he actually went through a process of thinking. For example, when he was a teacher at Adams College, the village repeatedly sent a message to him asking him to come back and be prepared to stand for election. They had elected chiefs there for the chief. And he kept on refusing because he was worried that he would not be able to support his family on the salary of a chief. And as I said in my article, he lets the reader into his mind, his thinking about what his Christianity meant for him, that it was not just a private affair that affected others. Now, what is interesting about Luthuli also is that everything is seen through the lens of a Christian, but his closest confidant was Moses Kotane, the leader of the Communist Party. And when there were important decisions, and he was in Groutville and he was banned, he couldn't leave Groutville and the Stanger area, they would send people down to tell him about some or other decision or idea that they had. And when he was unhappy, he would keep on saying, send Moses down, because he trusted Kotane. And I think that when Luthuli came round to accepting the need for armed struggle, it was partly because Kotane had also been very reluctant, and that when Kotane was persuaded, I think it was one of the factors that led Luthuli not to be happy about armed struggle, but not to stand in the way of it.
So how does studying Luthuli and his ethic help us in South Africa?
Well, you know, we live in a situation now where everyone reads about this one stealing, that one getting an illegal tender, and a number of acts of corruption. And the reaction of many people is not, okay, these people must be removed and you must get honorable people. Some people think politics is dirty, it's always dirty. So it's important for people to have exemplary leaders to learn from. Now, in my case, I never met Chief Luthuli, but I met and worked with Mandela, Sisulu, Tambo to a lesser extent, and not just Walter Sisulu, also Albertina Sisulu. I never met Lillian Ngoyi, and I'm reading more about her now. But when you read about, learn about exemplary leaders, you get an idea of how to conduct yourself. For example, Sisulu was a very, very important person to learn from, in the sense that you could see how carefully he listened. Even if he thought you were talking nonsense, he would listen very, very carefully. And he would try to give an answer that didn't say to you talking nonsense, but would try to lead you along a path where you would grow. Now we hear about Luthuli as well, that he used to spend long time listening. He took very seriously his role as chief and later as president of the Natal ANC and then the ANC nationally. But he was not keen on rushing things, because to act ethically requires preparation. It's not something that just comes into your mind intuitively, naturally. They're not naturally good people, naturally bad people. You have to prepare yourself for it. You can learn the same thing from Mandela, although Mandela's temperament was very different from Luthuli. Mandela didn't have to be coaxed into armed struggle, because he was already a fairly aggressive young man, you know, boxer, and he had said things like, they will remove us from Sapphire Town over our dead bodies, long before the ANC had declared for armed struggle. So Mandela had a different temperament. But what you can learn from Mandela is that he changed a lot over time. He wasn't the same young man who came from Tembuland when he got to the Rand, when he met Sisulu. What is very interesting there is to bring in Sisulu again, is the people you relate to, how they influence you. And I think a lot of the rough edges of Mandela, a lot of opportunities Mandela got, came through his relationship with Sisulu, who arranged for him to get articles as an attorney. Also in prison, Mandela thought a lot, and when he came out of jail, the first MK commander, he also became the person who moved to establish peace in South Africa. So in the end, Mandela and Luthuli really were both men of peace, because war and fighting is exceptional and should not be allowed unless absolutely necessary. And I think when we study Luthuli, we must see what lessons it has for ourselves. The examples I gave in the article about him being allowed to impose fines, but you don't enrich yourself. He didn't accept bribes, etc., etc. So those are the sort of reasons.
Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about Luthuli and understanding ethical choices.